Well, I was born in Drimcoggy, Shra, Claremorris. That was our address. There was no Drumacady on at that time. Born into the house to Kathleen and Mattie Staunton. And both of my parents came from musical backgrounds. Mattie Staunton played the fiddle, and he loved music, he really did. And himself and Doc O'Malley, we used to call him Tomas O'Malley at home, they used to play a lot of music together around at house dances and stuff like that. Yeah. And when he was growing up, then when he was like knocking around playing at house Cayleys and that, he would have played with Doc O'Malley, and he would also have played a little bit with Jackie Derrick, who was a first cousin of my mother's, and who emigrated to Detroit. He's dead now, God rest him.
What year would this be when they emigrated?
Oh my God, he would have gone maybe in the, let me see, 50s?
Okay.
Yeah. But he played the fiddle and he played a bit on the box. And he ended up in Detroit, and he used to have a radio, Irish music radio show for years and years. So that was my father playing with those people. Mm-hmm. And then my mother came from Cappaduff in Drumacady, which was about 3 miles back the road. And her mother played the accordion at house sessions and house dances, and she sang. And her name was Nora Staunton. And we called her Annie, Nora Staunton. So, and she sang, that's where I would have got, we'll say, the Greenfields of Mayo song from. And I was courted when I was young. I didn't record that yet, but anyway.
Gorgeous, yeah.
She had a couple of songs like that, and she played the old melodeon style, one row.
Yeah, one row. Yeah.
So, and then she used to play at house dances, and sure, when the melodeon would be flittered and gone, and there'd be no one that time to fix the reeds or anything like that. There was none of that. So they'd have a whip around and everyone saw something and buy a new melodeon for her. And then my mother played a bit, but sure, once she had her kids, when she had us, she didn't. Right. She was too busy on the farm. Yeah. But Daddy used to play a lot, and around the place with the dock and that. So I'm the eldest, myself. I was born in the early 60s. And then my brother Pat is next to me, and then my sister Kate's the baby. So when we were very young, my mother and father both decided, well, one thing I want them to do is to be able to play music and to have an instrument. So, of course, the accordion was in the house from Granny, and there was a fiddle in the house. So, yourself, and there was a couple of whistles around the place. So, right. I ended up with the accordion being the eldest. I suppose it was just landed on my lap. And there was no choice in it. I just had the accordion, that was it. I was tipping away on it. And then Kate was playing on the fiddle from my father, and the whistle. So Pat was in the middle, and he didn't really know what he was going to go playing. So he was like, I think I really want to play the mandolin. So fair play to them. They went out and they got a mandolin, and he started on the mandolin that time, and eventually over the years he developed a grow for the bouzouki. So that's what he plays now. And Kate played whistle for years and years and years, and still does, but she was a lovely whistle player, gorgeous whistle player.
And you'd have grown up in the house, and I'm sure, although your mother hadn't the time to play as much, you'd have heard music nearly on a regular basis. I'm sure it was very part of the house. Well,
when we were really young, the only people I would have heard would be my father and Doc O'Malley, really, and Granny. Do you know? When we were like 4 or 5, that's the only music we would have heard. And of course the radio, that was it, the old radio. Ciaran McMahon on Sunday mornings, and I remember listening to Ciaran McMahon when I was really young, and really being blown away when I heard the Donnan first. Just that sound. Oh my God, my hair was standing on the edge. I'll never forget that. And Dolores Kane's voice. But apart from that outside influence, it was in the house, in the kitchen.
Much at home,
So we started playing tunes from Daddy. He was teaching us a couple of, the Sally Gardens, the Sligo Maid, the Rose and the Heather, the Roger-a-Doo, and a couple of polkas and things like that. So we were tipping away at home, and we'd be in one of us, we'd be in 3 different rooms, one in every room, playing our little tunes to ourselves, and then we'd play together a bit. So my mother then decided, you know what, I think maybe I'll bring them through an old class. So she looked up.
She was really passionate about it.
So she found Martin Donoghue, God rest him, from Ballantyne, was doing lessons all around Mayo at that time. And he played the box, and he taught so many people music. So we ended up going to him for a couple of years in Ballinrobe. Sure, it was just something. It was like, you'd be looking forward to the class just to play the new tune that you found at home. Do you know that kind of way?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
He was
really,
an encourager.
But you were really keen as well, because like even describing,
we were just...
You went off to different rooms in the house to play on your own, to develop your own playing, and that's actually, as you know yourself, quite rare to instill that in a young one.
It was.
To play on their own, and to want to learn
exactly,
It's lovely.
We had fierce thirst for it.
Thirst for it,
and it was a natural thirst. There was no sort of like, you must play and you must practice.
So you weren't forced, there was no force,
none
you
at
just
all.
wanted
It was as natural as breathing now. You know what I mean?
Lovely,
it was just in the blood. That's it really.
Yeah,
you know?
fantastic.
And so then we went to the classes, and sure, like that was just, you know what that was good for? Meeting other people who were playing music like ourselves.
Of your own age,
You know what I mean? Because at home at the time, we were the only ones playing music and going to a class. We were the only 3 in the whole of Turvicady at that time.
Wow.
And I'll tell you now, we were considered a little bit square, if you know what I mean. It's funny, even though I came across that in school many of the time, even in secondary school I came across that, you know, even a little bit in the school situation, in the music world as well, unless you were doing classical music, you weren't considered a musician at all in those days. Unfortunately, how times have changed. But
there's still an element of it. I mean, there's still that...
You know, you weren't studying piano.
No.
So, what are you playing? Oh, the accordion. Sure, look at my old granduncle used to play one of them one time. There's one in the house in the attic. So there was that sort of an attitude. But it's funny, it never bothered me. Now, maybe it would... It didn't bother me.
I love this anyway.
I just love this so much. It's part of my life. It's just like, it's part of me. It didn't bother me in the slightest. It didn't bother me.
It doesn't affect me what you think of it.
Not really. It didn't. And thanks be to God, we were very lucky that my mother had such a grow for it and an appreciation of what we were doing. She just understood. And I think, like, even at the age of 14, I'll never forget it, we were actually playing gigs. Do you know what I mean? The 3 of us, Clan Staunton, the Staunton family. And we used to play in the Larches pub, which is back on Lochnafucha, you know. And the crack, I'll tell you the crack we had. And then my first cousins, my mother's brothers' children, there was 2 of them playing as well with us. Kathleen Staunton on the accordion, and she now lives in Chicago. And Tommy Joe Staunton on banjo mandolin he was playing, would you believe?
Oh, yeah.
Remember the double strings?
That's right, yeah.
And
the banjolin or something.
Banjo mandolin, yeah. So he and Kathleen live in Chicago now. And she still plays the box. Still plays the Polo-Soprani.
So your family, like, I mean, you said you were the only family in the village. Like,
I forgot about it. It's funny.
No, that's okay. But as time went on, so like you're talking about, what age were you when you were playing roughly?
I was playing at around 6 or 7.
Okay. Right,
and then, then as we were like 13, 14, we were actually playing out in Loch.
So you were playing gigs?
In the summer, yeah.
Wow.
In Loch, what do we call it? The Larches. The odd one in Morluke's.
All right.
Yeah, the old Morluke's.
And as time went on, did you see any change in interest towards music, or did you, like, was there any other young fella come up, Mary Staunton's playing the accordion? I kind of like it, you know.
Mostly tourists. Yeah,
right,
people
so locals, yeah.
No, not really. No. But when I say that, once we started playing and they were dancing, that was a different thing.
Right.
Then there was great appreciation because they wanted to dance.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, in those days, that's what they were doing. They were dancing to the music. It wasn't that they were sitting around and listening.
Right,
you know,
it wasn't a kind of a concert type thing. They were playing for dancing.
It was playing for dancing
and set dancing.
And out you get, and that was it. And
so you're talking around the 70s, early 80s.
Oh yeah, 70s.
And because around that time, where some of the other interviews we've done, the 70s in Mayo in particular, there was an awful lot of the kind of the dance hall music, the show bands, and then the kind of more Americana country music. Would that music have kind of creeped into Tormac at all? And
it would, of course.
It would. So you'd have that would be the music of the time, kind of thing.
You would have had a bit of that maybe in Morluke's or in maybe in the Larches too. But we were the Saturday night feature anyway.
Right, fantastic.
Set dancing. But in the summer, we only did the summer like. But then we eventually graduated to playing for. Session, do you know Session, Stór Ceoil Mhaigh Eo?
Oh yes, yeah. Wow.
All right, so we really
You're big shots now, huh?
I'll tell you, we were famous here.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was so funny. So we ended up playing as a family again, and I forgot about my first cousins. That's because I don't see them anymore. But anyway, it was ourselves, and we ended up playing in Westport, in Hotel Westport, with 3 dancers. Michael Cunningham was a fantastic dancer. I think he still lives in Westport.
Michael Cunningham, right?
He's from up the country, Athlone, I think, is it?
All right.
Brilliant dancer, fantastic. And one of the Redmonds from Castlebar, you know the Redmonds.
I know of them. Yeah.
And John Hoban then played with us, and he of course did most of the singing, which was great because I was a bit nervous about singing always. So he'd sing a couple of songs, and I'd sing one Stór Ceoil Mhaigh maybe, and then you'd have the dancers hopping up and down a few times.
So this was a performance.
This was a performance for the tourists in the hotel, sitting down, having their little bit of food, like their pizza and their drink. Yeah.
And was this the kind of the first kind of the era of the start of the kind of the pub performances?
Oh,
really?
Absolutely.
It was around that time.
And you know, we really enjoyed it. We used to look forward to it. Yeah. And my mother would always drive us out, and she'd sit there, and we'd play and drive us home. She was always with us, you know. And Daddy'd go the odd time to here and have a pint. You know. And then the other session then was in Mulrenny Hotel.
Jeez.
So we do 2 a week in the summer, Mulrenny Hotel and Hotel Westport, with the dancers and everything, and the laughing and the crack. We used to have great crack. And then there was a hotel then in Louisburgh called Old Head Hotel, still there, and the owner, John Lydon, was from Trumacady. So John wanted us to play, you know, because we were from Trumacady. So he asked us to play. So we used to play every Saturday night in the Old Head for years and years, every summer.
So you had your residencies, basically.
Yeah, we had, and we were very young. Like,
yeah.
I'd say like I probably was 13 or 14, Kate was probably 9 or 10, and that went right up until I was 17 or 18. You know, we did it for a good few years. Yeah.
So you were in national school, I take, at this stage, maybe going into secondary school when you were.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, and you had a couple of gigs a week during the summer.
Then, but it was strange because I suppose that in those times you didn't have many. I don't know, was there anybody going to? Not too many going to classes or performing or you know, doing gigs and that kind of thing at that time.
Yeah.
You know,
very
so
rare,
like, you know, it was like, oh, what are they at?
And would you have come across? Can you remember, like, during them times, meeting up with any kind of memorable characters or even people of your own age that you, like you mentioned, John Hoban, for instance, you're older, but like, can you remember, like, was there any other bands playing at that time that you'd have heard of or? Yeah,
around.
Yeah.
Not really. I don't. No. It was just ourselves and. Obviously, Doc O'Malley was a big influence in our lives. He's always over in the house to Daddy, so I loved his singing. Still do.
Yeah.
I love his voice. And I mean, he was singing when I was in the cot.
Yeah.
So I suppose that he was the first singer I would have heard at home, apart from my grandmother, like. And then my mother started bringing us to sessions in Castlebar. So this was the other side of, it wasn't just traditional music then. Once we got into Castlebar, to the town, we heard John Hoban singing.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan and all
so
of these,
American types of
as well as their songs.
Yeah.
And Frank O'Reilly then played fiddle with them. Frank, who's still living in Westport now, from Castlebar. So they used to gig around together, and sure, like, I was just blown away by all this new sound.
Yeah.
So now I found that I could actually play the box with all these songs, and I mean, I never would have got that at home, or I never heard that at home.
So it was a new experience.
So it was a whole new other side to music. You know. And
how would your mother's generation take to that? Because she sounds like she comes from a very traditional background.
She loved it.
So for her, it was about music.
Oh yeah, it was all about. It was all music. If it was good, it was good.
If it was good, it was good.
Yeah,
lovely.
Yeah. So she had a great appreciation for all that, and she loved it. She loved driving around.
She must have liked it. If
and she'd sit there and have a cup of tea or whatever she'd be having, and just
the pride element to her three.
She was quietly.
Yeah. They wouldn't be going on board about it.
No, there was no.
There'd be a secret kind of.
Yeah, it was very, very quiet. Very quiet sort of appreciation. There was no sort of outwardly
expression of that.
Or ego. No ego.
No ego. No.
There was no ego. It was pure music, pure enjoyment.
And of course, her being a musician, she appreciated the music aspect of it. And what you were doing, and he hungry to learn tunes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So then at that age, I take it you went to secondary school, and then you went off to college and left home kind of thing.
Left home at 18. And unfortunately, when I was just gone 18, I was in leaving cert, my father passed away. And I was 18, he was 49 years old. So that was a huge loss, huge blow to all of us. And that really, not just for six. He was 48, So we kept playing. I have to say that for the next couple of years, I suppose I was very glad to have had music in my life, because it was, I was lonesome. I certainly, there was no counselling for people who had a sudden death in the house that time, and you just got on with it, and it was tough. But I had my music, And I had my music friends. I had to leave home then. I had to do the leaving cert and how I did it. I reckon he did it for me. But when I did the leaving cert then, I got called to Carysford to train as a teacher in Dublin. Hated going to Dublin. Absolutely detested the fact that I had to go across the Shannon. I just loved the West. And my heart was in Mayo. And oh my God, every Friday evening I was out in Lucan off the bus with my Polysoprano and my thumb out.
Oh, mother of God.
And I'd always hitch home every Friday. Imagine, I'd hitch home.
You hitched down to Mayo?
Yeah, every Friday evening. Yeah.
That was serious.
I know, but I wanted to get home that bad. But I suppose at home, my Mummy was still rearing my brother was still at home, Pat, and Kate was
the young ones were
Kate
home.
was only 14.
Wow.
So it was a big thing for me to go home.
To help.
I didn't really want to be away from Mayo at all. But anyway, I met some great musicians in Dublin that
of course, this
I
is the other
heard
side.
other side. You know, I used to walk down to the Brazen Head in Dublin and hear, you know, I don't even know. I didn't get to know them as such. I just heard music, but I went along to hear it. But I went to the only pub in Dublin at the time. There was people from the West used to go. It was called the Man of Arran. I don't know if you ever heard of the Man of Arran. It was down on the quays, well down on your right, past the Brazen Head, and it was over to the right. It burned down. But anyway, I used to go in there and you'd meet all the Galways and all the Mayos. So Mary was happy then when she met the West.
Yeah.
And in there, I heard Anne Conroy playing the box. She used to play the box in there. And I met Sean Henry for the first time from outside, from Bacon. Yeah. Or not Bacon.
I heard it.
What's the name of the place? Oh my God. Anyway, he was an amazing man. He loved music inside out, and he loved accordion players, particularly.
Yeah.
And he knew every accordion player up and down the country. But I used to go there and sit, you know, just listening to the accordion playing and the West of Ireland accent around me. I felt at home.
Yeah.
So I got through Dublin like that, and then I used to go to what do you call it? Slattery's on Capel Street.
That's right. The big
I'd go down there to hear singing.
Yeah.
And that's my first time in my life hearing one of my favourite singers, Sean Garvey from Carsiveen, singing. And I used to go down, I'd come all the way in from Monkstown and walk down the quays on my own just to hear that. But
what a legend,
What a legend. It was amazing. Yeah. So I was lucky that I had...
But I know you're away from home, but at least you had the comfort of this thing that you loved around you, and going to the pub once every so often, hearing the West of Ireland accent and being around kind of like-minded people. But you were kind of fortunate in the sense that maybe by going away like that, it kind of gave you a new strength, but also an inspiration to continue playing and learning and developing.
Absolutely,
you know, as opposed to maybe staying at home and maybe just doing the same thing over and over.
And I was learning, like, you know.
I was hearing new music, new songs. And
definitely,
like that,
And then I was in a house with two Mayo girls and the rest were Galway girls, you know. So we used to have the crack, and I was living right across the road from the main door of Cultural in the Hearn. So I used to trot over the odd time, you know, to listen, and sure be listening to all the... There were owl lads, in my opinion, at that time. I was only 21. But at least it was near me. It was always near me, you know.
And that
kept
was
me
the
going.
source of
and it inspired me,
of course.
Kept me going,
How many years were you in Dublin?
3 years.
3?
Couldn't wait to get out of it. And the minute I finished, I was across the Shannon as fast as my legs could carry me, I'll tell you. And I made up my mind I would never ever leave Connacht again. I don't care if I never got a job. But
it meant something to you.
It meant a huge amount. I'll tell you how much it meant to me, David, because people used to be laughing at me. It was 1983 I was finished. And people, you know, jobs were hard to come by that time. And people were applying for jobs and teaching all over Ireland. So anyway.
And they'd have gone anywhere for a job.
Tommy. And they would have gone anywhere for a job, yeah. But you just applied for everything that came up in the paper and say, pray you'll get one of them. So Mary anyway decided I was only applying for jobs in Mayo. Well, the rest of the women said, are you out of your tiny mind? Like, who do you think you are? Mary, like, you have to apply for every job. And I said, no, I'm staying in Mayo, I'm not going anywhere.
That's strong-minded.
So I applied for Mayo only, and there wasn't many jobs in it. And the next thing I got called for an interview in Ballyhonus in County Mayo. I went up and did the interview. I knew nobody, absolutely nobody. And that was like a long way off for me, like Ballyhonus, East Mayo. Like. And didn't I get the job? And I started, and I found out a neighbour of mine, Anya Whelan, was a teacher there, so I ended up staying with her for a while. Then I finally found my own place. But that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I spent 7 years in Ballyhonus, and that's where I heard the finest music of my life. Every Monday night, a session was started by 2 local doctors, Dr. Alan Delaney and Mick Brogan.
Brogan, I know.
Brogan from Kinvara. And they decided, well, there's a musician after moving to town, we'll have to start up an old session. And Mick played the fiddle. So he said to me, will you come on Monday nights? And I said, of course we will. So off we went. And he knew a lot of the older musicians because they were his patients. And they were all at home, they weren't going out. So he encouraged them all to come on, out, it'll do you good. And out they come. So I met Dominic Rush, the whistle player, one of the finest whistle players, Tommy Ganley, the flute player. Oh Lord, there was, I can't think of the other man's name. I need Joe Byrne here to remind me of their names. And Joe himself, of course. And Colman O'Reilly used to come along, and Nola Grady came in the odd time. And Gregory Daly on the flute.
So but you'd be kind of close to Roscommon.
You would. And Mick
Keenan.
Keenan came in on the Bowron, God rest him. He's dead now. He was from Bruff Cross, out there near, as you go towards Armour.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was a great man for the music. We used to often go to his houses for sessions. Oh, I had the most wonderful education in music. I was 23 years old, and I was there surrounded by the 70-year-olds, and there was no, like 1 or 2 people come in who loved the music to listen to us, but there was hardly anyone there, just ourselves. We had the best time. And I learned so much Mayo music.
That's the best of teaching. I mean,
wasn't I very lucky?
You're very, very lucky.
I considered myself extraordinarily lucky.
In comparison to even current times, like you couldn't buy that.
Yeah, oh, you couldn't.
No, you couldn't.
Around the turf fire. Stop.
And learn it the way it got. I don't sound like an advert for like a Walt Disney movie, but you learned it the way it kind of was supposed to be learned. Really,
it's just gorgeous.
It was very natural. It was very.
And the fun organic. And the talk in between, the chat in between, stories.
Yeah.
And like, it was so natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a gig or anything. You didn't have to perform. You were learning all the time. In a lovely, natural way. Like.
And of course, what's more important sometimes than the actual tunes is the character of the person playing it. So you got to hear the characters of the people.
You did.
Because we'll touch on that again, some of the people that kind of stood out in your head growing up.
Well, definitely all of that.
All of that
people.
gang,
And meeting, that's where I met Joe. That's where I would have met Joe Byrne and the laughing and the
and laugh and humour and
the humour, and the songs and you know, really getting to know people as much as you were getting to know your music. You were getting to know the character behind the tune, you know. And
that in turn helped your own ability of playing the tune because you associated
and your understanding,
and the style of playing.
And you'd remember where you learned such a tune and who you got it from and all that. You know, that it wasn't from a book or
no.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was from an actual person.
You had a quite rare experience because
I had.
You're learning from the source really, or as near as you can to the source in a very organic way.
Oh, it was lovely.
So you were there for a while, I take it. You were teaching
7 years.
7 years? Wow.
Yeah, but then I was coming and going. You know, you'd be going to Flas and you'd be going to this and that, and things started to, I suppose in Ireland then things did start to, you know, there was the bands like the Bothy Band and Planksty. Well, Planksty were there when I was in primary school, but and they even came to play in Tormacady Hall when I was 13.
They played in Balmullet one time as well.
I always remember it. Oh my God! I remember Christy Moore gave some plectrums to my brother Pat. Well, you'd think he won the lotto, like it was just. We were just so happy, and so it was just so gorgeous because Tormacady had a brilliant festival in those times. Of course, we were too young to be let out to half of it.
But was it a folk festival?
Oh, it was a folk festival, and they had all the bands. Inchiquin, I remember Inchiquin coming, Noel Hill and Tony Lennon. I remember them playing in Tormacady Hall. I remember Planksty.
And who was the organiser?
The Chieftains came.
No.
Yes.
And what year was this?
Who was Sean Bawn was at it, and I remember people who worked in Gaeltacht and they probably weren't all from Tormacady.
SBB.
Sean Bawn and people like that. But people, I don't know who was organising it actually because I was too young. Do you know what I mean? I forget. Do you know, we weren't at a lot of stuff. We were only allowed at things in the daytime because we were quite young. It was a fine festival.
And you don't know what year this was, like?
It would have been mid-70s.
Wow.
Yeah.
So a festival in
fantastic festival. And it just all petered out.
It's all gone,
Imagine. Now, you expect in the last 10
years. You expect now to be more opportunities for these.
Or even the last 10 years, but no.
It seems to be going back.
And it just, certainly,
With things like this.
But,
so 7 years in Ballyhonus, and then where did you go to?
Then I met Jerry Mulvell.
Oh. Tell us about Jerry.
My better half. I met Jerry at Crinne na Mod in 1985. And, I was still in Ballyhonus then, I was, So I went down to the Crinne and I followed Patsy Broderick, she was driving in front of me, and a few others, and we went down to the Crinne na Mod. I didn't know where Kinvara was, And Mick Brogan was there, of course, my old friend. So he's from Kinvara, so he was able to say, "Oh, sure, sit here now, and I'll show you this pub and that pub." And we had tunes outside Connolly's, I remember, 1985, and then Mick said, I'll bring you to a party. There's a lovely party down the road in some house. So I'm down, and sure Jerry was there. I met Jerry, and the rest is history. We just started playing right away, and played all weekend. And he was living in Kinvara at the time, and he was playing with Charlie Pickett. Charlie Pickett lived in Kinvara. It was just, when I heard it, was just the most gorgeous, easy, steady music. And learned a lot. I used to meet them for tunes then, obviously. On Wednesday night, I'd come from Ballyhonus to Kinvara, back up again Thursday for school, down again Friday, and I'd be there all weekend until Monday morning. But so I heard an awful lot of music then in Kinvara. I learned.
And of course, it was quite a happening place at the time for music.
It was lovely. It was lovely. I used to hear Seamus and Manus Mcgrath used to come along and play there, and Gary O'Brien was living there, and then there was Charlie Pickett and Jackie Daly. So I heard a lot of music then, in Kinvara. That's where I learned a lot of music as well, and loved it. So I suppose then eventually we got married and lived in Athenry. Got married in 1987 and lived in Athenry for 8 years. And there I started playing with Kevin Rohan, the fiddle player who's played Chaskin.
That's right,
A lovely man, and learned loads of lovely tunes from him as well. And what happened then? Up and down to Mayo all the time, of course, playing as often as I could.
Mayo was still important to you.
Very. I'd be running home like.
Wow.
And even when I would be coming back from Trumacady to Athenry and I'd turn the road at Carnmore Cross, my heart used to sink. I was so lonesome. Wow. I used to cry actually, because I said, oh my God, there goes the mountains, no water, no lake, no sea, nothing. And I was reared on Lough Mask, and it was just the flat fields of Athenry. And I was thinking, oh my God, I can't stick this. I'll have to get out of here. So I said to Jerry, whatever else we do, we're going to move out of here, or we're going near the water. So we started house hunting. And
was Mayo on the radar at the time for house?
Jerry was working. He was working in a job in Athenry, and he had, in those days, he was supposed to live in the area. Okay, so eventually that rule was dropped. So I said, right, the minute the rule was dropped, I said, right, here we go, let's go. So at that stage I had a temporary job in Galway. I was working in Carnmore, and then I ended up working in a place called Carnon near Athenry. I was there for a couple of years, and that's where I had my kids, Luke and Maeve. But anyway, we started house hunting, and I find this house by accident, and I'll never forget it. I was in the car with Mary Shannon and Sharon Shannon. They came to see the house with me, and my little daughter was in the car asleep. She was 1 year. She was 6 months old.
Wow.
So we found this house, and we said, "This is it." I could see the sea from the kitchen window, and I could smell it at the front.
It's a gorgeous place.
And I said, "Oh my God, this is it." And then somebody said to me, "You won't believe it, the name of the place is Trinlor." Well, I couldn't believe it. So I said, "This is meant to be." So we moved here 24 years ago this year.
Wow.
Yeah, my daughter had her first birthday in the house. And then we started to play a lot of music then around Clarenbridge, Kinvara, Ordenmore sometimes, and that's how we got to know Alec Finn, my neighbour, for 24 years. And I played a hell of a lot of music with Alec then down through the years. And I suppose I played more music with him than anybody else after that. And we gigged a lot together around the place, and back and over to Boffin and Inisheer and Inishtar.
You were good friends though, more importantly.
We were great friends.
We were great musically as well as personally.
And we had great fun. In between the notes.
In between the notes, which is very important again.
So I was very thankful for that. So I was very lucky.
You were. It sounds like you had it a lot better than for the sense of being around good music, like top level music all the time.
I just loved it.
And you were absorbing this all the time.
I was, yeah.
And then you moved here, you're married, your life was going on, but music was very much part of your life. You had the day job, of course.
I was teaching for a while. Yes, I ended up in Loughrea then. That's where I finished up.
Were all right.
So I was up and down to Loughrea for about 15 years from here. Wow. But so then I suppose when I was in Loughrea, I made my first CD. My kiddies were small. And with a lot of encouragement saying you might as well put down some of those Mayo tunes and those Mayo songs, and you know, the Greenfields of Mayo is your granny's song, put it down. So I ended up going, Sharon gave me a lot of advice at the time, Sharon Shannon, who was a good friend of mine, and said you should put it down for yourself, do it for yourself. And so I did. And through Sharon, I suppose that's why I ended up with Steve Cooney, I suppose, down in Dingle. So I went down and did the CD with him.
Wow.
And it was a great experience and learned a lot. And but I still ended up putting a couple of tracks on the CD with Alec as well.
Lovely.
Which I did in Ennis.
And
quiet.
Because
Steve, we were supposed to do it all in Dingle, but that didn't work out. So I did some of it in Ennis.
No.
So Alec made sure that we did the Greenfields of Mayo, and that was that. So that was the first CD, and then through that, of course, you know yourself, you get asked to play at this and that and the other. So I ended up then being asked to play. Sean Kane asked me to play support to his band in Austria. He was always on tour in Austria. So myself and Mary Custy, whom I adored playing with. I love her music and I love her style, and I loved her pace. Nice steady music. So myself and Mary and Ona Neil played support to Sean Kane and the band in Austria on a full tour in Christmas 2000. Oh, it was just lovely, great experience, you know.
And a lovely country
and
at that
lovely.
time.
And that would have been my first tour away, really, you know, because I wasn't touring. I was too busy teaching. And before that, I had one Irish tour in Ireland, the ASB tours. Remember those?
Oh,
So Kieran Hanron asked me to do that, so I did that.
That was before the network tours. The
ASB, that's right. So I did that with Kieran Hanron and Michael Rooney on harp.
Oh, lovely.
And Tommy Hayes. We had a lovely time. Never stopped laughing. Pain in the face laughing. But we had a lovely time, and so that was my first tour. Then the second one was Austria, and then I think 2 or 3 years after that, then I ended up in Germany doing a tour with Kathleen Loughnane, whom I played a lot with here with Alec. She's from Tipperary, lives in Galway. Plays harp, brilliant harp.
Lovely pair.
So myself and Kathleen and Custy again, Mary Custy, did Germany in the Florian Furst was his name.
That's right, Florian Furst.
The Women of Ireland tour, he called it. 3 women. So you had Clare, Tipperary and Mayo, of course.
Of course,
So that was that, and after that I ended up doing the Catskills and, you know, playing a visit there and playing some music there and taught some singing in the Catskills.
East Stirling up in upstate New York.
So that was...
You're always flying the flag though, like, I mean, as much as you lived in Galway and you're very...
very proud.
I'm very proud of where...
Extraordinarily proud of Mayo.
That's lovely,
Quietly proud, you know.
Quietly proud, but still enough to make an album with music from that part of the world, which is sometimes...
and the second album, The Circle of Friends, that I decided to do, I really, really wanted to put down Mayo tunes on that and Mayo songs again. And I just wanted to more or less have that connection with Mayo. So I put down The Widow from Mayo, that song. And... I put down Neary's Jig, and then I put down versions of tunes that John Mcgrath taught Dan Collins. Because Dan Collins was a friend of mine in New York. He played the fiddle. He owned Shanachie Records.
That's right,
I loved his fiddle playing. I loved playing with him, and I loved his character. He was very funny, very witty, you know. But I said to him, "Would you play a tune with me on the album because of the connection with John Mcgrath?" And he goes, "Oh, no way, I've never recorded in my life. I haven't a notion of recording with you."
Was he taught by John Mcgrath?
He was.
So this John Mcgrath we're talking about, John Mcgrath's from Rossport in North Mayo. He'd have lived in New York in around the early 1900s, 1910s, 1920s.
That's right. Quite
influential in the whole Irish scene at the time.
There's that.
And Dan Collins, you've got company there,
He's an amazing, he had an amazing store of tunes, but he never wanted to record. He said, "I'm not good enough." He was very critical of his fiddle playing, but he was a beautiful fiddle player. And I'm sure you know Kathleen Collins, his sister.
Kathleen is quite a well-known
fiddle player, and she was married to Joe Burke.
What county are they? Galway people? Dan Collins?
His connections in Limerick.
Limerick, right, okay. I knew it was the West, sorry.
But anyway, I persuaded her, I don't know how I managed it, but I talked him into it. I said, "Come on, it means a lot to me because it's about John Mcgrath here." And he was saying, "What?" So he said, then he had all these stories about John Mcgrath, and he said, "Look, okay, I'll do it." So he came back, and we played the tunes, and then he went back to the States and he added on the tracks from America. I don't know how he managed that. We did rehearse here with Alec out the back. And we put it down. He wasn't too happy with the fiddle, so he did some of the fiddle again afterwards. But it was just a pleasure and a joy to have him because of the connection with John Mcgrath. I was excited about that.
So he was a student of John.
He was a student of John Mcgrath. Yeah, and he has all the notes that are there on those two tunes at the end. John, of course, Dan wrote those notes for me about Mcgrath and about how he learned those tunes. John Mcgrath's versions of the tunes. So I was really thrilled about that because Dan has passed away since, you know. So I was really, really lucky.
Also to get that information, the fact that he knew this giant of Irish music from Mayo.
From Mayo, which in America.
In America, in this amazing time of music, the golden age of Irish music, and a man that is sometimes forgotten about.
Exactly.
When mentioned amongst the greats, and it's lovely to have someone to actually remember him. And
so it was
you have that documented.
I have it documented, and it meant a lot to me, David, as you can imagine yourself. Just to get Dan Collins to come over and do that. So that was the we say the joy of that album was, and apart from playing with all the amazing musicians
I'm
that
just
were on
looking
it.
at here. You have some team of musicians.
Yes, it was great fun, and Sean Garvey sang on it, one of my heroes.
I see him there.
And it was a real joy, and of course Alec produced it. So we had the best of fun you could ever imagine.
I could imagine. And then here at the house, your daughter, just Maeve.
Maeve, I have my son Luke. Luke is going to be 28 this year. And they of course, like we did ourselves, we started them off with music, and they went down the boating here to Tommy Keane for lessons. And Luke started on the whistle, and then he played drums in a rock band and all that. He did all this stuff, and low whistles and high whistles, and then he took up to the guitar, and he never looked back. He really fell in love with strings, loved guitar.
And he's still at it.
He was in a band for a while there, himself and another two lads. Porry Kane was one of them, and they did cover all the versions of the Dubliner songs. So they were like the young local, and they gigged around here. But you sit down and to be one Dubliner song after the other, it was absolutely hilarious. And Luke was playing the snare drum, and the guitar. But they did all the Dubliners, and Porrick was on mandolin, and the other lad was on guitar. They had great crack. So I was really proud of them.
But music, they have this interest in them.
Lovely. And then Luke, that was Luke, and then Maeve then. Took her a long time to figure out what she wanted to do, but believe it or not, I had to go to Mayo to borrow an instrument for her because she didn't want to play the whistle and she didn't want to play strings. She gave up on all that. So she said, I think I want to play the concertina. And I said, well, geez, concertinas are very dear, you know.
You have to be sure you want to play.
Hold on a minute here. So, of course, I rang my old friend down there, one of my favourite people in Mayo ever, John Wyke Gallagher. And John's wife, Mary, plays concertina. And fair play to these people, they understood and they said, look, you can borrow the concertina for 6 months, and you better know at the end of the 6 months you want to play it. So she borrowed it for 6 months and never looked back. So eventually she got her own.
Fair play. So
she's playing a bit of concertina. So she's here, and Luke's in San Francisco, electrocuting half the city, I suppose. He's an electrician.
And happy out, like
happy out, and he's with a load of Mayos and Kinvarras and Tipperary. He's safe. He's happy.
Do you go down to home often? How often would you visit Drumacady?
Drumacady, maybe twice a month, and if I can manage it, I should be going a lot more often, but at least once a week anyway, if I can.
And family are still there,
But my mother's there, Pat's there, and my sister Kate was in Ayr Square. She's now living in Boffin, Inishboffin.
She moved to Boffin?
She immigrated to Inishboffin.
She left the country?
Yeah. Well, it was a Mayo Island now, you must remember
I
have to remind them all.
Andrew Murray mightn't agree, but...
I remind him every time I see him. Don't forget now, Andrew, you know.
He was probably born in Mayo when he was from Mayo Island. So she moved down to Boffin, fair play,
Yeah, Desi loved the fact that it was a Boffin Island. He loved saying that. He was very proud of that. He said
that it was a Mayo Island?
Oh, yes. Yes, and he used to talk about his father and mother and the grandparents, how they all had County Mayo on their birth cert. And I said, of course, what else would they have on their birth cert? Not Galway anyway. I said, I have to be careful, I'm a Mayo woman living in Galway.
When did Boffin become Galway then? Like, what year was that?
I forget. Was it the 60s, yeah.
It was like
Maybe the 50s. I'm not really sure.
It was a while back now, right? But it was.
But that's an important piece, because I when I went to Boffin first and we used to be going out with Mattie and playing concerts in the old days hotel to raise money to build a community centre, which they now have.
Fine place.
But geez, the crack, we used to go out in the old tub boats, the small boats. Out, I'd have a different gig every month or every so often, and they were great gigs. But our concerts, there were benefits, but we used to go out anyway, and I always remember the first time I played with Desi and Francis O'Halloran and all them. I just felt completely at home playing with them. Like, it was just...
What could you put that down to, though? Like, what was the vibe?
It was just that steady vibe. I loved his bow, and I loved Desi's bow. He had a great bow hand, that lovely...
swinging it.
Lovely. And Daddy used to have that swing in his, playing. And it just was like in my psyche, in my heart, when I heard him playing, I just felt completely, here I have arrived, I'm at home. This is it. This means something to me.
Isn't that lovely?
It was very close. And we used to always say it.
And could you, if I asked you to kind of define, or not define, but even describe, because sometimes this is sometimes forgotten about in Irish music.
Yes.
How would you describe, or is there a Mayo style, for instance?
Yeah, is there a Mayo style?
It's a very broad term, like, because we're very much influenced, or vice versa, like Sligo, South Sligo in particular, was very much influenced by a lot of the Mayo musicians and teachers way back in the early 1900s, and the same can be said for some of the North Galways and kind of West Roscommon.
Yes.
So, if you were to describe, like, the style of your father, for instance, the Desi, the thing that you talked about Desi's playing that you loved.
The wavy bow.
The wavy bow.
It's a lovely name, I know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what it was.
Yeah, sure.
He talked about the people that he would have listened to, like, he listened to Phil McGing in Trumicady, who played the accordion. And I only heard him once in my life, but he immigrated to the States, you see, as a lot of them did, you see.
Of course, yeah.
But Phil, Joe Byrne has them documented now, I think, but Phil played the accordion upside down. He didn't, the reeds weren't changed.
He's right.
So he played from the bottom up.
Such as easy.
Do you know what I mean? It's that easy, like. So he actually, I remember him, like, playing with the, so
the turned upside down and the low notes down near his knee, as opposed to up to the... Wow. So that's just how he picked it up.
So Daddy would have been listening to him, and after that, oh my God, after that, I suppose just himself and Doc O'Malley learning tunes, and
so they'd be the stalwarts for a long time. Like,
they were, and there was another man called Tim Tady. They called him Tim Conaboy, played the fiddle as well.
Yeah.
And was all, I think he may have spent a bit of time in London, but he lived back past Morlooks, back that area. So Daddy would have known him. They would have played together, I suppose, the odd time, not too much, mostly Doc O'Malley and himself.
And when would they have...
They had a Ceilidh band as well, I forgot that bit. They had Bonnie Ceoil over Ceilidh, yes. So you had, in the band you had Daddy and Doc on fiddles, and you had John Power from, where was he from, Connemara, but he's living in Trumicady, on the drums. And then you had an accordion player. I'm trying to think of his name now. I'll have to get this for you because I don't have the picture in front of me and I can't think.
Because that might be one of the things, because when we're doing the video, we'll just focus on two things that are iconic.
Yes, I'll show you that.
And maybe that might be something nice to talk about.
Yeah, I'll show you the picture.
The Ceilidh band and Trumicady and the picture.
See, we were decorating, the picture's been put away and I can't find it.
No,
but anyway, I'll have to ask about the accordion players.
So there was a Ceilidh band in Trumicady?
Yes, and there was, there was a third fiddle, and his name was McCarthy, and he was from Cork. He was a guard in Parchville. You can imagine.
So he was roped in to play in this Ceilidh band.
You can imagine now, the guard and the two locals.
And the two locals, and the two headers.
So, so there was the three fiddles, and there was the accordion and the drums.
No piano, no kind of, no backing.
Oh, there was another woman as well now, sorry, I haven't got the picture, you see, Judy Miller, and she played fiddle as well. She's from Trumicady. So you had three Trumicadys in it, and then you had Cork, and you had Connemara. But Judy Miller was a great friend of my father's, and they loved playing with her. Now she immigrated to America as well, see. So there was only the Doc and Daddy left, we'll say. Do you know?
And I wonder, it's another thing, like more than my own part of the country, Trumicady would have been hit very bad, as Mayo was with emigration.
There's more Trumicadys in Chicago than there are in Trumicady.
Yeah. And you mentioned Chicago, for instance. Like, could you name some musicians or people that would have remembered musicians that went over from Tormacady, for instance, that would have played an instrument or something. Like, imagine the amount of musicians that would have had to leave as well.
Yeah.
I mean, come out of a village or out of a town and gone. And maybe they were the fiddle player in that village, or they were the musical family in that village. They had to emigrate.
Yeah. Before Daddy's time, or you mean, or around Daddy's time?
Even around your father's time, like the people, like you mentioned that
Phil McGing, well, there's Phil McGing, Judy Miller, they immigrated. God, I'd have to look. There wasn't that many.
There
you
wasn't
see.
many. Okay.
And it was very spread out.
Yeah, it's in a big area, so like, I mean, it's.
But even in Mayo, if you talk about the county of Mayo, music as a whole was spread out in Mayo.
It's quite a big county.
You little pockets of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they were far from each other. Like,
and they were far from each other, and they weren't.
And even the main town that you were close to, when it came to traditional music, the likes of Westport, for instance, wouldn't have been the most town for traditional music.
No.
For instance, there were a lot of show bands there and a few people played, but like when it
no
comes
one,
to the die-hard stuff that you're
talking about. There was no one playing much in Westport that time. John Hoban was singing songs, and I started doing gigs with him in Westport, of course.
So that's around the 70s, 80s. Yeah.
And then you had, of course, like you had the Langans, like that I met. They were a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
But I remember them, like when they were kids.
And they'd have been taught by John. So John, to his credit, like he would have started off teaching a lot of people in around Castlebar and Westport and so on, the Langans, to say, Kelly.
He started off a lot of people. I remember Alicia. But when we say in our era, there was very, very few playing. Very, very few playing. And maybe in one way, maybe it was a good thing for your own style.
It developed your regional sound.
I certainly wasn't
local.
Yeah, we were very local, and we were unaffected. And I suppose insofar as you can be, because I mean you're going to be affected as you get older and as you play with more people.
Well, in the case of you going to Dublin, for instance, so like, but can you remember going to Dublin saying the way I play sounds very different?
Yeah.
In other words, could you say this is really a style?
I could. Yeah.
Could you hear the Mayo in you, like, as opposed to the Dublin?
Absolutely. Yeah. I could, of course, but I couldn't put my finger on what that is.
What it is, yeah.
But I suppose I always find that Mayo music, when I hear nice Mayo music, steady, I just say that it's very, very honest to God. I find that music from Mayo is very honest music, very, very unaffected.
Yeah.
I don't think
untampered with.
Very unaffected. I do, and I'm sure, like, we must have had our local styles. I mean, you know, do you think that there'd be much of a difference?
I think
between, we'll say, Tormacady and Joe Carey.
I think that wavy people. Sound, that kind of honest to goodness, you know, the wavy, the raw thing, that kind of heartfelt.
Yeah.
Every note had a depth to it. Every note had a weight to it.
Yes. And an honesty to it.
Not very pretentious.
No.
But that's
no ego.
No ego.
And I think that's a beautiful thing in music, because, as you know, it happens in all music and in all arts, I suppose, form, that you will have the ego taken over in some.
Especially in times that we're in, because it's very easy to become a rock star now, when it becomes we're up on a stage and we're something, as opposed to, you know, we have to remember where we got this. And,
exactly.
The nature of this project is to talk about that and to emphasise how important these people that influenced you or me or whoever, how important they were in the county, and to actually mention them and to say that
and
these
to remember,
people existed.
Yes, and also and to remember that is where it came from, you know, and that is part of us, you know, and we will change and grow and develop.
Of course,
and our music will change, and it may even get a bit faster, or, you know, new tunes and all of that, and a lot of newly composed stuff coming in and all of that. But I think deep down there is a lovely, as I say, grower, nice, wavy, steady style in Mayo still. I think there is.
And I think maybe the musicians from here are the ones that kind of identify it themselves. They'll know it when they hear it.
Yes.
We're all we all play music, we all do this, we all do that, but we have our go-to comfort music.
We do, exactly.
And that's the music that we grew up with. That's the long, drawn-out notes, the notes with weight and substance in them.
And humour.
And humour, very much.
Because I think that's something that I've, you know, played it here and there and everywhere, and it's one thing that I notice that can be void completely in some sessions. No humour. No. And like,
very serious.
I have often said to myself, oh my God, like, this music has come down through generations, and when they had nothing, they had the music, you know. They had
to
the
play
music.
that music, you needed humour.
But they needed a bit of humour to keep going in their own hard lives at the time. And life hasn't got any simpler.
No.
It's got more complicated.
A lot more complicated.
And a lot more difficult in many, many ways. And a lot more stressful.
Well, here we are now, and which leads me to very much to the next question, is the times we're in now. We're in the middle of a global pandemic.
Yes.
We're talking about learning music from people that had their own struggles.
Yes.
That had challenging times of their own through living in very rural, poor parts of the country.
And great poverty.
Great
hardship.
Yeah. Like
they had no machines, they had no nothing.
Poor land.
They had no money.
Like I'm West Mayo, you're told me,
Yeah.
the land isn't too dissimilar.
Yeah.
It's a lot of harsh land, either stone or bog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And these people had to make a living and feed families and survive. And one thing I noticed that is consistent through a lot of hardships is music.
Music is what kept them going.
What kept them going. And that level of humour.
And kept them sane, I'm sure. Without a doubt in my mind.
Just now, look at the very thing we're talking about before we start this conversation. How important music and even cracking a joke is during a time when everyone else is freaking out.
Yeah.
And we're in a pandemic, but we have Wi-Fi, we have running water, we have flushed toilets.
All of those things. And
imagine a time when that stuff wasn't there, when food was harder to come by, for instance, and you had more kids maybe. Oh, stop! That
big
was hard.
families,
that was big
and they were hungry. I'm sure they were, and they had, like, I only have to look at my own grandmother, right? Granny, who played the box at sessions and house parties or whatever, and sang, and she always had a sense of humour, and she always had that happy heart. Now, she had a hard life. Her husband died when my mother was 3, right? So my granny had to go out, work that land by herself, and as soon as my mother was, I'd say 9 or 10, was out working with her, right? Now, she had to keep going. They sold eggs to the local shop for a couple of bob. She kept lodgers, and she'd have the linen crisp and clean and on the beds, and these lodgers would have been coming to work in Gaelthair factory, but she made it work. You know what I mean?
But do you think?
And she had the music, and I'll tell you, the music was very important. They had their 78. They had the 78 records.
The gramophones.
Yes, and that's.
But do you think, looking back at them times, very rural West, Tormacady, East Mayo, how now we have everything, and yes,
we have too much.
We have too much. They had little, but they made it work.
Their simple life.
But maybe was that their blessing, in the sense that they had no comparisons. Everyone was the same. There was no rich neighbour with the Lexus or the Mercedes and the big house and the 2 stories. Everyone was kind of the same.
Everyone was the same. Yeah.
They were all kind of
united, like in that.
United, but also quite local and quite staying to their.
Yes.
Not many people in Tormacady would have gone to Dublin, for instance,
or
gone even to maybe Westport or the neighbouring town, Galway or whatever.
They did not. No, they just lived a simple life, and they lived for each other. They lived to rear their kids and to do the best they could for them.
And do you think, could you think that would have kind of helped them in a way during these hard times, because all they knew was their village, Clonduff or wherever these places.
Yeah, and they were united, but they were great neighbours to one another too. You know, they were very, very close neighbours. The Mehel. And, you know, you could always rely on so-and-so to come and do this and that. And, you know, they were like one big family.
One big family,
yeah. I used to often think that Tormacady, that's another reason I felt at home in Boffin, I think. I used to often think that Tormacady was like an island. You know, when you go over Shra Bridge, right, if that bridge wasn't there, you couldn't get in, like, first of all. So when you go over Shra Bridge, right, there's Tormacady.
Yeah.
And then you go back and you're nearly in Galway. You're nearly in Clonbur, like.
Yeah.
And in front of you, you have Loch Mask, and behind you, you have a big mountain.
Right.
And behind that mountain is Westport. Yeah. So you were like cocooned in this beautiful area that people pulled together.
So that was the mindset of the people then. There was like, we're in this...
We're separate.
We're isolated. We're isolated.
We're a bit isolated.
And we have to get on with it, and we're here together.
And you must get on with it.
And you must get on with it. So neighbours, there was that kind of... And then, with the few people that played music in there, you also saw that in the music, like the Jock and your father, for instance. They grew up as pals. They were musical buddies. They stuck together. Yeah, they were like family nearly. They were, because of their common interest in this kind of. And so, phenomenal. And we just took. I think you take that with you then. You know, wherever you go, the way you described. Wherever you go, you take it with you. You know, you took that islandy tourniquet attitude up to Dublin.
Yeah,
and you looked for it when you went around to the pubs. And
I wasn't happy in the city.
And you weren't happy in the city.
No.
And the one little moment of happiness you had is when you sat down listening to someone from Galway or from Mayo speaking.
I made sure I found out where the Galway pub was. And the Mayo pub.
So that was, and that was...
It was very serious.
So you never really left...
I couldn't leave
Mayo,
it.
really.
Well, I'll tell you, you couldn't take Mayo out of me, no. And I really, really, really am very passionate about Mayo. I'm very proud. I really am. I really am. You know, everything even you've the pictures of the Reek behind you there, and bookshelf is full of Mayo books.
I've seen it. I'm in a house you're surrounded with Mayo stuff. Even you're living in Galway, I see you have a Mayo Reg car, which is actually quite impressive.
And and I have to tell you that when I finished teaching, you know, when you finish teaching, you get a couple of punts. So I said, okay, this is it. We're going to get a car now that'll last us hopefully another 20 years anyway. So I said, I'm going down to Mayo for it. And my husband says, what? In the name of God, you go down to Mayo for it?
So you even went to Mayo for it?
I don't care, I'm having a Mayo Reg.
That's fantastic. That's unbelievable.
So you asked me about Mayo, that's how passionate I am.
That's very, very good, So, it's if we had to add one more thing to this, it's something that we kind of left out. It's something, how important, it's a stupid question, because Mayo is very important to you. Knowing you at the length, I know you, your music, you represent Mayo more than as much as you can. How important is it that you're from Mayo? No, and that's a very Walt Disney type question, but do you know what I mean?
Does it mean, how much does it mean to me?
How much does it mean to you? It means everything,
It means everything to me. Do you know, I often think of that verse of that song. You know, another song that I learned from Dr. Moya. We didn't talk much about singing at all, but Mayo singing, you know.
We can, because we have time, we'd like to touch on that, because that might be one of the things that we might do on the videos, maybe sing that song.
Because the as you know, the big Connemara songs, all of them.
All from South Mayo.
All from Mayo.
Yeah. The big ones. I know.
Northside.
And of course but Mayo was never mentioned.
Yes.
And that's the thing, same with the music.
Conde Weo. But I often think when I do sing that song, The Dear Little Isle, there's one verse in it. I suppose some people use it as a chorus now, but there's one verse in it, and it says, I love every blade of grass green on your mountain, every leaf on your tree, every rock on your strand. I love your green hills and your murmuring fountains. I love you, Huishle, my own native land. And every time I sing that, I could nearly go crying, because I just say, that's really it. That's how I feel about Mayo.
So that's Mayo, really.
I love every blade of grass on it, every tree, every leaf, every murmur in the stream. And I just, and the only time I actually feel at home, believe it or not, you know, we're supposed to feel at home in ourselves no matter where we are, but there's something changes the minute I'm in Mayo. The minute I go home, I'm at home. I really am at home.
But what can you put that down to? Like, because of your past experience, your family upbringing, like,
is it? Yeah, what is it? I don't know.
Is it,
does everybody experience that when they go home? Maybe they do. But I just, when I go home to Mayo, I'm just like, as they say, Mahaveen. So I am just absolutely, completely. I'm in heaven. I do miss it, and I'm glad I'm only an hour away.
Yeah, you're really, and you know,
but still, I'm not in Mayo, but I do.
No, but and look at you, the next best thing, you know, in the sense that you're surrounded by hills and water, and
and there's some great musicians in Galway, of course, and I've been lucky as hell to have met them and played with them.
And we're all up in Donegal, you weren't a million miles away from Galway either, so that kind of contact was there and stuff like that.
So I didn't move too far away.
No, you didn't.
But I made up the mind, David, you know.